"Now then," said Grandfather Aiden, lowering himself into his creaky chair by the hearth. The fire cracked, throwing gold light across his face, and his old eyes gleamed like polished amber. Outside, the wind howled through the trees, carrying the faint rustle of fallen leaves down the lane. "You asked me, didn't you, why we carve pumpkins on All Hallows Eve?" The child nodded, knees pulled close beneath the blanket, eyes wide. Aiden smiled, a sad, knowing smile. "Ah, that tale's as old as sin and darker than the bottom of a well. But if you've the stomach for it, I'll tell you of Jack of the Lantern, the first of his kind. A man too clever for heaven, too wicked for hell, and cursed to walk between them for eternity." He leaned forward, the firelight dancing on the carved lines of his weathered face. "Listen well, child. It's not a tale for daylight ears. The trickster of County Kilkenny. Long ago, before iron rails and motor cars, before the church bells rang across every field, there lived a man called Jack O'Dannon. Folk called him Shifty Jack, for he could talk his way out of anything and into twice as much trouble. He was a blacksmith by trade, a liar by passion, and a thief by habit. There wasn't a lock he couldn't pick, a maiden he couldn't charm, or a priest he couldn't fool. But what made Jack special, what set him apart from other rogues, was his gift. Or rather, his curse. He could change his shape. It began small, a parlor trick at first. He could make his face resemble another's, change his voice, grow taller or leaner, older or younger, depending on his need. Folk whispered it was the devil's mark, granted to him one drunken night when he'd wagered his soul for 10 years of luck and life. Jack swore it wasn't true, but those who'd seen his eyes flicker red in the dark said otherwise. With his newfound talent, Jack became a master of deceit. He'd rob travelers by becoming one of their kin. He'd sneak into cottages, turning himself into a wounded lamb or a wayward dog, only to resume his form once inside. And if someone crossed him, God help them. For Jack was no ordinary scoundrel. He fed on fear. He liked to see the panic in a man's eyes when his own reflection spoke back to him in Jack's voice. And in time, he discovered that with every act of cruelty, every drop of spilled blood, his power grew. "Now there's one thing you must remember, child," said Grandfather Aiden, voice dropping to a whisper. "The devil never gives without taking twice as much." Jack thought himself cleverer than Lucifer himself, but when his 10 years of good fortune ended, the devil came to collect. He found Jack in a tavern, drink in hand and laughter on his lips. "Jack," said the devil, his eyes like burning coal, "your time's up. Your soul's mine." Jack, drunk and cunning, feigned panic. "Ah, but surely, good sir, a man deserves a last drink before he goes." The devil, amused, agreed. "Turn yourself into a coin," said Jack, "and I'll buy the finest bottle in the house with you a drink to toast our little deal." Grinning, the devil obliged. But the moment he did, Jack snatched up the coin and thrust it into his pocket, the one with a small silver crucifix sewn inside. The devil screamed and clawed, trapped by holy metal, while Jack laughed till tears rolled down his cheeks. Now, Jack said. "Seems the devil's my prisoner tonight. Perhaps we can strike a new bargain?" And so he did. The devil swore to grant Jack 10 more years of life, free from torment, if only Jack would let him go. Jack agreed and foolishly believed he'd won. For a time, Jack thrived again. He grew rich, bold, and cruel. His shape-shifting gift became monstrous. He could become a wolf, a shadow, a wisp of smoke through a keyhole. But there was a cost. Each time he changed, a little less of Jack returned. His hands stayed twisted too long. His eyes gleamed too red. his reflection too wrong. Villagers began to whisper that Shifty Jack was no longer a man. Children disappeared near his forge. Travelers who stopped to ask for water were never seen again. And when the moon rose full, some swore they saw something moving through the fog, half man, half shadow eyes glowing like dying embers. Jack tried to stop it, but every time he took another form, it grew harder to come back. His skin began to ripple like wax near flame. His teeth sharpened. His voice rasped like wind through a graveyard gate. And worst of all, he began to hear whispers, voices calling his name from the dark. They promised power. They promised freedom. They promised he'd never die. He should have known who it was. The devil was patient, and Jack's time was nearly up again. On the eve of All Hallows, 10 years to the day since their first bargain, Jack sat alone in his forge. The air was thick with smoke and the stink of burning iron. Outside, the wind carried the cries of trick-or-treaters' little souls playing at ghosts, while the real thing lurked close. "Jack," came the voice, deep as thunder, smooth as oil. The shadows peeled back, and there he was, the devil, smiling. "Ah," Jack said, wiping soot from his face. "I was wondering when you'd show your horns again." "This time," the devil said, "no tricks, no bargains. Your soul is mine." Jack smirked. "We'll see about that." He lunged for the crucifix that had once saved him, but the silver melted in his grasp, turning to ash. The devil laughed. Jack ran. Through the forest, through the bogs, through the winding hills. He changed shape again and again, a fox, a raven, a man made of mist. But the devil followed each time, patient as hunger. Finally, cornered on a cliffside, Jack made one last desperate plea. "Let me live," he gasped. "Just one more year." The devil smiled. "You've had enough years for 100 lifetimes, Jack. But I'll tell you what." He leaned close, his breath reeking of brimstone. "If you can outwit me one last time, I'll let you go." Jack's mind raced. He saw a hollow turnip lying nearby, left from his dinner. An idea struck. "Fine," he said. "But before you drag me to hell, grant me a light to see the way a single ember, so I won't stumble in the dark." Amused, the devil plucked a coal from the fires of hell and tossed it to him. Jack hollowed out the turnip and placed the ember inside. "Cheers," he said. "Now off with you." And somehow the devil did. But this time, it wasn't mercy. It was mockery. Jack wandered the countryside with his ember-lit lantern, cursed never to rest, never to eat, never to sleep. Everywhere he went, people screamed, for the shifting had taken its toll. His flesh hung in tatters, his eyes burned red and hollow, and his face had twisted so far from human that he could no longer bear to look upon it. One night he tried to end it. He took his own knife and cut his head clean from his shoulders, burying it beneath the roots of a withered oak. But when he awoke, his head was gone, and in its place, something heavy and round sat upon his neck. He looked into a puddle and saw a pumpkin, hollowed and carved by unseen hands, glowing from within with that same hellish ember. From the darkness came the devil's laughter. "Your tricks are done, Jack. From now till Judgment Day, you'll walk the earth neither dead nor alive, carrying that light you begged for. A lantern to mark your deceit. And you'll appear only on the night you loved most, Halloween, to remind mortals what becomes of those who think they can outwit the devil." And so he did. Every year, when the veil between worlds thins, Jack-o'-lantern returns to the forest where he made his final plea. They say if you wander too deep into the woods on Halloween night, you'll see him a headless man with a glowing pumpkin where his face should be, searching for the soul he lost, whispering bargains to those foolish enough to listen. Grandfather Aiden poked the fire, sending sparks up the chimney. The child clutched the blanket tighter. "So that's why we carved the pumpkins," the old man said softly. "To keep him away. The light confuses him, you see. Makes him think he's already left a lantern there. And if he ever comes calling..." He leaned forward, voice dropping to a hush. "You don't answer, not till sunrise. For Jack will offer you anything, riches, beauty, even immortality, but it's all lies. His bargains always come due." The wind outside rose to a wail, rattling the windows. For a moment, it almost sounded like laughter. The child swallowed hard. "Grandpa," they whispered, "do you think he's real?" Aiden smiled faintly. "Real enough." He looked toward the window where the storm light flickered faintly against the glass. And for just a second, the reflection there didn't quite look like him. It looked like a face carved of orange flesh, grinning from ear to ear. The wind had grown stronger outside, scraping branches against the old cottage roof like the bony fingers of the restless dead. The fire hissed, spitting sparks into the dark, and for a moment, the only light in the room came from the dancing orange glow of the hearth. Grandfather Aiden leaned back in his chair. His voice, once rich with storytelling warmth, had grown lower, slower like a bell tolling in the fog. "Now, where was I? Ah, yes. Poor Jack-o'-lantern, cursed to wander for eternity, a creature neither here nor there nor anywhere meant for peace." The child, Finn, drew their blanket closer, eyes wide. "But, Grandpa," they whispered, "what if he found someone to take his place?" Oh, Aiden's gaze flicked up sharply. The firelight shimmered across his irises. For a heartbeat, they looked almost molten. "Now, who told you that part?" he asked. Finn shrugged uneasily. I thought maybe that's how it goes. Every story has a way to end, doesn't it?" The old man smiled faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Aye, sometimes an ending isn't an ending at all, just the beginning of another soul's story." He looked toward the window again. The glass fogged from the warmth of the fire, but beyond it, the darkness pressed close, thick and still, as if the night itself were listening. "You see," Aiden continued, his tone quieter now, "Jack wasn't the only one to try his hand at cheating death." He reached for the poker, stirring the coals until the flames licked higher. Shadows danced across the walls, long, spindly things that seemed to move on their own. Over the centuries, folk would go looking for him. Some out of curiosity, others out of greed. Always the same reason: they wanted what he had. Time. Just one more year, one more chance, one more breath. But every single one of them vanished. Finn's voice quivered. "Vanished where?" The old man's lips twitched. "Under the mountain, some say. Others the bog. But there's one place folk never go after dark Blackthorn Wood. You know it, don't you? That thicket beyond the old well where the ground always feels wrong." Finn nodded slowly. Everyone in town knew of Blackthorn Wood. It was a place the sun seemed to avoid, where birds fell silent, and where the mist hung so thick it looked like breath frozen in the air. "Well," Aiden murmured, "that's where they say Jack walks still the forest, bound by his own bargain. Some claim he waits for travelers to lose their way, so he can whisper to them from the dark. One more chance for one small price." A gust of wind slammed against the shutters. Finn jumped. Aiden chuckled softly. "Easy, lad. It's only the wind." But even as he said it, the flames flickered blue for a heartbeat, and the air grew colder. After a while, Finn began to doze off, lulled by the fire's rhythm and his grandfather's low, rumbling voice. But in that haze between waking and dream, he thought he heard something, a faint scratching. It came from the far side of the window, slow, deliberate, like fingernails across the glass. Finn blinked and sat up, rubbing his eyes. The fire had burned low, and Aiden's chair sat empty. "Grandpa?" he called softly. No answer. The wind had died, yet the scratching grew louder. He crept to the window. The glass was fogged, but through the blur of condensation, he could just make out light. A faint orange glow bobbing in the dark. At first he thought it was a trick of the reflection in the last flicker of the dying fire. But no. The light was outside, swaying slowly among the trees. It grew brighter, closer. And for a split second he saw the shape that carried it, a tall, crooked figure, shoulders hunched, head too round, too large. A carved face burned against the dark. The grin was wide, impossibly wide, the eyes hollow and bright. Then the light blinked out. Finn stumbled back from the window, heart hammering. "Grandpa," he cried. The door creaked open behind him. Aiden stood in the doorway to the kitchen, a candle in hand. His face looked pale, drawn, though his voice was calm. "What's all the noise for, lad?" Finn's breath came out in shaky bursts. "Someone's outside, Grandpa. I saw them. I saw it." Aiden looked toward the window, his expression unreadable. "Ah," he said softly. "You saw the lantern then." Finn froze. "What?" Aiden stepped closer, the flame of his candle trembling as he passed. "You've the sight, then. Just like your grandmother." "What are you talking about?" He knelt, resting a hand on Finn's shoulder. "There's no need to be afraid, lad. He won't cross the threshold so long as the fire's lit." "Who won't?" Aiden's eyes glimmered. "Jack." The name came out almost lovingly, like an old friend spoken of after long years. "But you said he's not real." "Oh, he's real," said the old man quietly. "But not in the way you think. He's a story that became itself. Every year, the tale grows a little stronger. Every retelling feeds him. And tonight, he looked toward the window. The orange glow had returned, closer now. Tonight, it seems he's hungry. The air grew heavier. The fire dimmed to embers, and the candle in Aiden's hand guttered, its flame stretching thin. Finn pressed closer. "Grandpa, what do we do?" "We wait," Aiden said. "And we remember." "Remember what?" "The story. Because that's what he wants, lad. He feeds on fear, aye, but it's the telling that binds him." He rose, standing tall despite his age. His shadow on the wall seemed to stretch unnaturally long, bending toward the window where the light burned like a second sun. "You see, the devil played a crueler trick than he let on," Aiden said, voice taking on the rhythm of his earlier storytelling, but now it sounded rehearsed, ritualistic. "When Jack begged for life, the devil gave him more than time. He gave him hunger. A hunger for souls to share his tale, for every voice that spoke his name gave him form." The scratching on the glass resumed, louder now, desperate. Aiden turned. "Don't look, lad. Don't meet his eyes." Finn couldn't help it. He turned. Through the fogged glass, a face leered back at him, a pumpkin grin, fiery and wet, carved into something too real. The mouth stretched as if to speak, the hollow eyes burning bright enough to light the trees behind it. Then came the voice. "Let me in, boy." It was smooth and deep, almost kind. "I only want to share a story," Finn screamed. The room erupted in chaos. The candle burst, flaring bright before extinguishing in a hiss. The fire died altogether. The window shattered inward with a shriek of wind and leaves. Aidan shouted something in Irish old words, fierce and rhythmic, and the ember from the hearth glowed once more, faint but steady. The light drove the darkness back just enough to see him. Jack stood in the threshold of the broken window. His body was long and thin as a tree trunk, skin as black as soot. His hands hung like claws, and from his shoulders jutted the faint outline of ribs that glowed faintly beneath the skin, as though fire burned within him. But it was his head that froze the blood. The pumpkin grinned wide, dripping orange sap that hissed where it hit the floor. The ember in its hollow center flickered like a beating heart. "You kept me waiting, Aidan," the creature rasped, voice like burning wood. Finn's head snapped toward his grandfather. "You know him?" Aidan didn't answer. His gaze remained fixed on the thing in the doorway. "I thought we had a bargain," Jack said, tilting his head. "A life for life, every generation." Finn felt the world tilt around him. "What does he mean?" Aidan closed his eyes. "I told the story every year so he'd stay sated, so he wouldn't take another." Jack's grin widened. "And yet, you told it to one with the sight." The child's heart pounded. "Me?" Aidan reached for him, desperate. "Don't listen, Finn." But it was too late. The light inside the pumpkin flared and the room dissolved into shadow. Finn felt himself falling through darkness, then landing hard on cold earth. When he looked up, the cottage was gone. In its place loomed forest, endless and twisted, roots like claws and fog thick as wool. Ahead, a faint glow pulsed the same lantern light from before. "Grandpa?" he called, voice trembling. Only the wind answered, carrying the faintest whisper. "One more chance, for one small price." Jack's voice. The figure appeared through the trees, tall and hunched, its lantern swinging. "You've his blood," it said, "and his gift." I don't know what you mean." Jack's grin split wider. "The old man traded your line for his life long ago. Each generation, a storyteller to feed the flame. But you..." The creature leaned closer, the stench of rot and smoke choking the air. "You could end it." "How?" "Take the flame." Jack held out the lantern, the very same one from his tail, a turnip hollowed and burning with a coal that pulsed like a heart. "Carry it," the spirit whispered. "Keep it burning. Tell the story, or I'll take it myself." The lantern's light reflected in Finn's tear-streaked face. The choice hung there unbearable. And then, no. A voice boomed through the fog. Aidan stumbled from the trees, face pale but fierce, clutching the silver crucifix from his neck. "Back to the pit with you, Jack!" He thrust the cross forward, and the forest erupted in blinding light. Jack screamed a sound like every burning leaf in the world. His pumpkin head cracked, spilling fire and ash. The ground shook. Then all went dark. When Finn awoke, dawn light streamed through the cottage window. The fire was cold, the window unbroken. Grandfather Aidan sat slumped in his chair, eyes closed, a faint smile on his lips. The crucifix lay across his chest. "Grandpa?" Finn whispered. No answer. The fire's ashes shifted. Beneath them, something glimmered faintly, a small, blackened ember still warm. Finn picked it up. It pulsed once like a heartbeat, then went cold. Outside, the wind carried the last whisper of autumn away. And though Finn never spoke of that night again, every Halloween since, a small carved pumpkin sat in their window, its candle burning bright till dawn. For safety. For remembrance. For Jack. Years later, long after Aidan was gone, Finn grew up and had a family of his own. And on one particular Halloween, when his youngest asked why people carved pumpkins, he smiled faintly, staring into the flicker of the fire. "Well," he said softly, "it's an old story about a man who tried to cheat the devil." And as his voice carried through the room, the flame in the pumpkin flared just for a moment, as if someone, somewhere, had leaned close to listen.